So a little bit of cold, a little bit of rain, and tomorrow it's going to be in the 80s. So that's what is enjoyable about Illinois. Weather it's a verb rather than just a noun. But so glad everybody could make it here. This is going to be an interactive session. So we're all going to be have some breakouts as we go. So I want you to be aware of that, and your input is dearly appreciated and needed for what we're looking at. So we're talking about education or Hospital 4548, which is a Native American curriculum bill that's been revised somewhat. And we are honored to have Representative Maurice West here. And I'm going to go into a brief bio of him. And I'm going to also hand it out for you too, so that you can see. My name is Andrew Johnson. I serve as the Executive Director of the Native American Chamber of Commerce of Illinois. I have another company on the side too. I also serve as the chair on the Native American Employment Plan Advisory Council, and some of you all are on that, and was appointed to a second term for the Business Enterprise Program Council, which monitors and manages the minority certification compliance for companies here within the state. Very proud, very pleased to be here. Really say thank you. In terms of our agenda for what we're looking at, we've got about an hour. And so I'm going to do this introduction, and I'll go into a little more Representative West. Then we're going to talk about HB 4548, and Representative West will talk about the history, the drafting, the status of it. Now, I have some other handouts here that I'm going to make sure gets to everybody. As I said, it's going to be interactive. So we're going to break into small groups here. We have some of the tables. We have a series of questions that we are going to pose, and then look forward feedback from each of the groups in terms of what they think and their findings. And its key is very important for that kind of feedback, because this is here for Representative West, which is going to help refine, construct the bill that's there. And we're hoping something will get passed with this. But he's looking for that kind of feedback from our community here. And with you all present as leaders, it's going to be very, very important. And then we're going to talk about the next steps. There are some things that are in play. We'll let you know about those and seek your input and participation in some of those as we go. So with Representative West, he is from the Rockford area and is serving his second term. Are you up for re-election? So if you're in the Rockford area, you know the man to go to. He's serving on 6 committees right now with higher ed, mental health, and addiction, restorative justice, public utilities, revenue and finance, judiciary, criminal committee. And he is also the vice chair of the higher ed committee, and was just recently appointed to the Legislative Ethics Commission by Speaker Chris Welch. He is has worked close to close the skills gap with workers, invest in youth, combat domestic violence, create equitable opportunities across the state, and a very strong advocate for mental health and restorative justice. He is a proud graduate of Jefferson High, also Illinois College in Jacksonville, Illinois, has his master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and came back to Rockford to work with the community there in various areas. And actually was pleased to see you're an ordained minister too. So so that's quite an achievement too. Also a founder of Share the Wealth, or share the warmth in Rockford, which provides warm articles of clothing for the homeless each year. So we are very, very pleased to have Representative West here. And he's married, has a young daughter. So please, round of applause for Representative.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm really excited to be here because the work that I've been dealing with in terms of this legislation, I am excited for the fact that moving forward, I can work alongside you. So just to give you a history of pretty much why I'm here, why I filed legislation that was focused on the Native American community, is mainly because when I was in Rockford, there's a high school right outside of my district. However, in my region, within my city limits, that has a mascot called Princess Hanamiga. And is typically a Caucasian young lady who dresses up in Native American attire, dances around, and they call her Princess Hanamiga. Though we know princess is not a term is used. So I filed legislation my first term that focused on mascots, that it was essentially mascot reform, saying at the time, the language that was implemented was saying that you had to find a Native American tribe within a 500-mile radius of your school and gain permission from them. Then after I filed it, I was educated on where all of our federally recognized tribes went. Primarily, all of them are now in Oklahoma, I was told. And so when I filed the legislation focused on mascots, you can only imagine how famous or infamous I became. This became a news story throughout the land of Illinois. And I received praise, I received criticism, I received death threats for filing this legislation. When I was asked why I did it, I said, I empathize as a Black man on the things that my Native American family has to go through, brothers and sisters go through. And so in light of equity for all, I felt that I needed to make this move for my Native American brothers and sisters, because there's not a Native American individual in the General Assembly. And so if someone needs to speak for them, it should be, I will do that, right? I am not the subject matter expert. You are. But when it comes to process, as a legislator, I know that if I don't know who to talk to, I don't know where to go, file the bill and they'll find you. And here we are today. I was found, and now I know who to talk to, who to gain insight from, who to make sure that this language is satisfied by the Native American community and not by the politicians such as myself. So when it came to the mascot bill, I heard, thank you for this. I have people I'm connected to who are from federally recognized tribes who call me individually, thanking me. I've had people who call me and said, we never insult those people. Well, the fact that you call them those people is insulting itself. And I've had the debate between banning mascots and mascot reform. Personally, me, Maurice, is leaning towards mascot reform, education more so than implementation, mainly because, as you see, I'm a Democrat. Majority of the schools that have these reprehensible mascots are in Republican territories. If I could easily just push an elimination, but how does that help to share the story, to help our young people to appreciate the history of Native American people, especially when it comes to Illinois? I just learned something today. One of my talking points is always Illinois is named after a Native American tribe. I just realized that is a confederacy, a consortium of tribes called within the Illini, and that's where our name Illinois came from. And so, in my opinion, I will say to my colleagues, this is why we need to ensure that our young people know the true history of Native American people, and not just the state of Illinois, throughout our nation. So with that mascot bill, I did not move the bill. I killed the bill myself because I knew it was all bark, no bite. I could tell these schools that are in rural Illinois, that are in conservative areas, to get permission, and they can find a way to get around it and keep their names. And so last year, Jeremy, I'm thankful Jeremy is with me. He's my chief of staff. He and my team, we talked about this mascot reform, and came to the conclusion that ensuring that there's a curriculum that focuses on Native American history is more important in this space than mascot reform. Because even if we change mascots, eliminate mascots, students need to still understand and appreciate true Native American history. So that's why we are here with 4548. I put the mascot bill on ice. It's not dead. I just put it on ice so that we could focus on Native American education. And that's where we're going to be connected with Andrew. And I'm really thankful for that. My job as a legislator, my job when it comes to the relationship that we develop and we build to fine tune this bill, consider me your chauffeur. You all are the subject matter experts. If you want me to go right, I'll be driving right. If you want me to go left, I'll go left with this bill. And in order for me to do that, I need to be in tune with what you are thinking, understand why you want to go a certain way so that I can really advocate on your behalf. So both bills, the mascot bill, the Native American history bill, is on ice until I speak with you, until we come together and work on this to make it the best that it can be. Until we figure out a way to unify the state of Illinois around this concept that will help all walks of life understand what true Native American history is. As a Black man, I know my history. My ancestors were slaves. Don't know who my ancestors were. That's how my history went. But I know my history. I fought and advocated for Black history. Many of people who fought and advocated for Black history. But when it comes to Native the community that was here before everyone else, community that dealt with just as much of being marginalized as my people, but it's not appreciated and talked about as much as for my people. I understand and I empathize, and so that's what makes me fight rigorously for this. By no means am I saying I know what all needs to take place, but I know that there's a community of people who are not magnified on the state level. And like Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So just because my community, as Black community, is making headway, if my Native American brothers and sisters are not making headway, then I'm not. That's where I'm coming from. I said all that to say, I'm not making a move without you. I'm not going to act like I'm the subject matter expert just because I filed this bill. I'm not going to dare get behind a mic and say, the Native American people need this, because I'm not the one to talk that. I don't want to make anything. You should be in the posture when it comes to me, nothing about us without us. And that's the posture I'm taking. Nothing about you without you. And so that's why I'm really excited about this work. However, I want to put a disclaimer. After talking with individuals, especially when it came to the mascot portion of our legislation, there was a lot of talks about we need to get rid of them altogether. Case in point, the our skins, yeah, get rid of that. We're getting rid of that, most definitely. But when it comes to warriors, other chiefs, other things, let's talk about it, because I need, like I said, Republican territories are mainly the areas I hate to make it partisan and political, but a lot of the mascots are in those areas. And as we know, rural areas are predominantly white individuals who just need to understand and appreciate what BIPOC people collectively are going through. More importantly, what the Native American communities have gone through in your home. What I'm excited about, though, and concerned about, I'm excited about the window that we are in, window of opportunity. With the killing of George Floyd, I filed this bill before. However, with the killing of George Floyd, it opened the doors for everything. As you saw, everyone changed their name, changed their tune. The football team changed their names, and it's with more. And what was great to me was it was not mainly just because they were forced to, but because it finally clicked for them. They saw the light after the death of George Floyd, and they're like, maybe this is bad. And why that is great is because Jeremy and I saw an article this last night about this bill that is not moved, it's on ice, like I said, right? But it has put pressure on some of these rural schools to change the names without even the legislation, which is great. They see the legislation, they're like, yeah, we got to do this before the state makes it. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to toot my own horn or any horn to say that there's change. If they're seeing the way that the tide is turning and they're adjusting, I'm okay with that, right? However, this window of opportunity is only a window. And I fear that eventually it will close once more. George Floyd's killing has kept this window open longer than it's ever been. After a while, it will close again to where there will be hardened hearts on this particular topic. And I want to, along with you, I want to bulldoze through that hole. I want to go through that window as quickly as possible with effective legislation if needed, but more importantly, with a strategy that we will work together to organize, mobilize, get other legislators on board. We put pressure on individuals. We get the governor on board if we need to. We get other non-political heads on board to right the wrongs of the past and to bring equity, not equality. I'm not a fan of equality for all. I'm a fan of equity for all. Because equity allows us to be in the same position no matter how much resources we need to get. That's what I'm about. That's what I'm really excited about when it comes to this legislation. So when it comes to the status of what's next, I talked to Andrew and others earlier this year about this bill, and I made a commitment to never move this bill until you guys give me the green light. And so we're going to go back to the drawing board. And today is the first of many meetings of us going back to the drawing board on what effective legislation that focuses on Native American people, what it actually looks like. And I take second fiddle to this conversation. I am ready. I have a blank tablet that's not even on right now. I'm talking. But when you start talking, I'm taking notes. Figure out how we can do this. And so I don't know how long that will take. I've conducted and facilitated working groups that were a year long. Ours might be the same. It could be shorter. It could be longer. But I'm committed to however long it takes. I'm not in this for a win for myself. I'm in this because we need to do what's right. And my job between here and the time that I file new legislation is to do what I can to gain your trust, that you'll know I'm working for you and with you, and not against you. Any questions for me? That's my big speech. Thank you so much for that. I was talking to someone just a minute ago about unfunded mandates. Oh yeah, yeah. You hit the nail on the head. So when it comes to the mascot part of it, definitely we'll move forward with it. At the same, like I said earlier, though, collectively we'll come to an agreement on is it two separate bills? Is it what we call an omnibus bill, like everything that we need in one legislation, together we'll figure that out. So that's a great point. Thank you so much.
So let's go on to the next segment right now. In that, we want to do some breakout groups. I gave let's look at what the bill says right now and get your feedback. So everyone should have a copy of this. If you don't, here's some more copies. It can be handed out. And it's fairly short right now. So the particular piece of paper that you have, it's up there at the top. The actions down below let you know exactly where it stands here. And thanks to the leadership of Representative West, it is active. We can amend what's in there. We can provide feedback, and that's and I just have to thank you so much to include us in this. Nothing about us without us. That's just wonderful. What is interesting, though, in order to move it forward, it did have to go in front of some committees to get voted on. And on the second page, I don't mind bringing that up, but it was remarkable to me. It was in front of the elementary, secondary education school curriculum policies within that committee. It was allowed to move forward with a vote of 14 yeas, 8 nays, and 1 not voting. Every single Republican voted no on this. And keep that in mind as we move into this political season. And so it was very interesting to see with it. But take a minute to read, and then let's break out to the different tables and then discuss what you're, let's see, I want to, and think about what your impression of the current bill is. So if there are any additional changes, deletions to the way you see it here right now. And this is some of the feedback that we can give.
Push a bill when we're not being recognized. So again, it's about being and having recognition and recognizing that while our minority status is small in relationship to some of the other minorities, we're still here and we would learn voting law. So there's that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And I'm always going to advocate on the state side. So what you said sounds to me you want to get an American liaison.
There should be a Native liaison in every state representative office. There's a federal Native American liaison in every single federal congressional office. There is a person that may hold a couple of different liaison roles. But if you go to the House and you look at all of our representatives, every single representative has a Native American liaison in that office. And I think for a state that is asked to push Native American education, again, no federal tribes, no state recognized tribes, so we're already been erased from the state historical platform on a political level. And really that's an economic problem because they won't give us our lands back because it's an economic issue. That's really what it comes down to. So outside of that, how do you represent Natives if you don't have a liaison to our community? It's all about sovereignty. Yep. You know, when we talk about sovereignty, where our rights as constituents, we have to fall in line with, everyone else. But we, and I just mentioned, Mark mentioned too, as we sit in this building and how heavy it is to sit in this building of the Holocaust, you need to look around the room, and I want you to look at everybody sitting here, and I want you to really hear this. You are staring at survivors of genocide. You are staring at actual physical people whose families have survived genocide. When it was federal policy to scalp and kill natives for money, by its constituents. So the buy back in is where is the accountability in the actual history, and where is our representation within the state of Illinois. So as you look at that, that's that. So the only other thing that we're going to go, in some of the language that's written in the bill, that talks about studying the Native American experience. I don't know if we want to call our lives experiences. What we went through is not experience. So we propose possibly in that sentence that in its curriculum, included instruction studying the knowledge and contributions of Native Americans, including the history of Native Americans. I think to say it's an experience, kind of a joke, that's a laugh in our face. Yeah, I'll give it over to Pam because she got some good stuff.
All right, mostly talked about the language also. Really what we want to say is that focusing on the positive contributions and enriching the curriculum to include the perspectives of current contemporary Native peoples.
So instead of starting off with these words in the front about justifying the act of undoing discrimination, can we talk about it as we're going to enrich the curriculum, we're going to enrich it with the story of America that's missing, and all of the medicine, food, engineering, star knowledge, and science that is missing because it's not included. So not so much, and tell the truth when we talk to. But if we just start by beating them up over the head with the fact that they stole everything from us and never, treat us less than human, how about if we talk about this as
And I maybe talk about the language, cheap
Sorry, you
hear that?
Yeah.
So we were talking about language, line, and like we were actually discussing how that or asset-based language rather than subject-based language. So changing that language to the bill would really kind of Pam said earlier in terms of enriching your curriculum, talking about positive areas.
Gotcha.
Just to add to that, how do we see diversity as an asset? How do we see our perspectives as valuable? How do we bring that into the language that introduces itself?
All right. Well, listen up, y'all. Okay, section B, we talked about where it says including those activities. We think that since we have some curriculum already designed, tested, already rolled out, ready to go, that we should include in here that PBS isn't the only source of material. Instructional materials, including those established by PBS, which means guidelines. We can, if in this bill it talks about Native people being first and worst contributors to the instructional material, to test questions, things like that, then that would be super more inclusive, and that's a little more where the rubber meets the road kind of thing. But it looks to me like, and I could be wrong, but it looks to me like we're going to be relying currently on PBS to provide that material. And if it means PBS is the one that liaises and reaches out to us, then so be it. But as long as we have Native American inclusion into that curriculum on what to do and stuff like that, then we can be, because we have stuff ready to roll. I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking about making stuff that's already better ways to teach Native people, stuff like that. So that can be infused, but we need to have, I think you need to have some sort of language that talks about that's where it's going to come from.
Is why did PBS become the source of the? I don't know where we got that, but
I can tell you that. So since 2019, I've worked on 3 different curriculum legislation. Black African American history, LGBT history, Asian American history. And they all said the same thing. So I said to myself, I'm ready, and I want something from I know my colleagues voted on the board, I want to begin. So I took the language from the Asian American history that passed unanimously last year when we saw a lot of Asian folks getting beat up because of COVID. And so it passed unanimously. So that's where that PBS argument.
the reason why I asked is because then it would put the pressure back on Native American communities and then put in the action items in PBS of do you have enough Native American representation within PBS to be the liaison for our curriculum. So then that's a two-sided, that's kind of double sided. The other thing is that each individual school board shall determine the minimum amount of instructional time that qualifies as a unit of instruction, satisfying the requirements of the section. That's a check mark. It could be a paragraph or 2 over a day. That's why I thought it was brilliant. They talked about adding those questions into standardized testing. But what does the actual curriculum look like? And are we going to have people within ISD, which is the Illinois School Board, are you going to have Native American representation to develop this curriculum on a larger scale with those folks on this working group on how we continue to do that? So I'm just looking for the accountability factor of who really asked natives and what natives did you ask and did you reach out? I'm just looking for that accountability factor.
Okay, let's pull back together real quick. And so to talk about, we have to go what our, we're going to talk about what our next step. And is okay. You can see we had other questions in there too. We got through one. So our next steps, Representative West has put together a working group. We're having our first meeting May 3rd. So we'll be talking this through, and we're going to have, we will need to have more sessions with other, like this, with other members of our community to make sure that everybody's voice is heard and is included in this. We also need to interact with the Illinois State Board of Education. I've reached out and talked to some other folks. And so we'll have a dialogue with them as we go through this, because without their support, we're not going to have a bill passed. So we want to make sure that we work with all of the bodies that are there. And it's key to report back to Kate, to the Education Committee, and to our Native American community at large. And Mark? We as Native people need to be consistent with always to be on the side of Native Americans for what?
So we understand full transparency. Republicans don't have enough numbers to kill anything. So you don't have to worry about Republicans in those states. However, I would personally like it for it to be a bipartisan legislation where Republicans vote on it, but they can't kill anything. Yeah. So one thing Andrew forgot to mention is he's the facilitator. So I'm sponsoring it, but I'm working alongside Andrew, and he'll be bringing individuals that he feels will be best for this work. So I'm leading on it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to. This will be a community effort, and we'll make sure that we work together. One other handout that I gave was with regard to other state education resources and articles. A number of other states have been through this before, so this references other articles, but also the legislation that was put into play by those particular states. The most aggressive was out of Montana because it is a constitutional requirement. It is in their state constitution for this type of education. But to look and see what's been done in the other states and what we can use here, hopefully apply here too, would be a good understanding and help us pull together the most comprehensive legislation. Yeah. I think we're at the end. Please, a round of applause, Representative West. And I cannot thank you enough for your words and your support. And we look forward to working together and getting together more often for this. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for the 6th annual Urban Indian Education Conference. And look forward to many, many more. So have a great day. Thank you. Thank you all.